Hello everyone, and welcome to Marketing for Startups. We'll be kicking off in a few minutes. We're just going to give everybody a couple more minutes to join. So very warm welcome, and grab a coffee, tea or water in the meantime.
How about now? Can anyone hear me?
Yes, welcome.
Can anyone see me? Can anybody see me?
No, we can hear you.
All right,
All
working
right.
on this.
No worries at all.
Sorry, was not expecting.
Oh, there we go. You've appeared. Welcome everyone who's joining. Great to see so many of you coming in. We're just to give everybody another minute and then we'll kick off. All right, perfect. Let's get started. So welcome to anyone who's just joined. This is Marketing for Startups, in-house versus outsourcing. We've got a really great panel of founders and experts here today. So really excited to have you all joining. I'm Mia, I head up marketing at Juggle, and we work with startups and scale-ups to place top talent. So we've spoken to hundreds of founders, placed a lot of marketing roles, and by popular request, we're hosting this webinar because we've seen a real surge in demand for certain marketing roles. So with that, I'm going to hand over to all the panelists to do a quick intro. Jules, do you want to kick us off?
Sure. My name's Jules. I'm the co-founder of Tally Market. We enable teams to book on-demand workspace. So if that's a hot desk for the day, right through to private offices you might have once or twice a week. So you can book over 1,000 different workspaces across the UK and some other cities in Europe.
Perfect. Thank you, Jules. Robert?
Hello, guys. I'm Robert. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Racquetball, which is a mobile app that helps people find local sport partners. So if you want to play tennis on a Sunday and you've got no one to play with, then it's quite easy. You download the app and you'll find one in minutes, and you can find coaches and clubs and courts around you. So that's that.
Cheers, Robert.
Thank you.
Move on to yourself now, Matt.
Okay, can you guys hear me? Hallelujah. And you can see me? Lucky you. My name's Matt Lerner, and I run Startup Core Strengths, and it's basically a virtual accelerator, and we help seed mostly in Series A stage startups to kind of turn the entire startup into a growth machine instead of doing marketing as a silo. We've worked with over 100 companies, and we have a 96% founder likely to recommend.
Awesome. Thank you, Matt. Karina?
Hello, I'm Karina. I have a few jobs. So I'm the CEO and founder of Be Nosy, a health tech startup that focuses on creating protection against air pollution. I also work as an advisor for an ad tech startup and focusing mostly on the sales and marketing as well. And then lastly, I work with Founders Intelligence, which is part of the Founders Forum group, where we advise large corporates on how to take an entrepreneurial approach to create a new business line. So one of my current clients, for example, is BP.
Awesome. Thanks for taking the time out of what sounds like a very busy schedule to be here. And last but not least, Sahil, handing over to you.
Great, thanks, Maya. I'm Sahil. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Margie. We are a financial planning and money coaching platform that helps employers improve the financial health of their employees, whilst at the same time saving both employers and employees thousands of pounds by improving their workplace pension offer.
Perfect, thank you. So quite a broad variety of industries, which always means a broad variety of perspectives, which is great. Everybody throughout, please submit your questions throughout the chat function or the question function, and we'll try to get to as many of them as possible at the end. If we don't, we'll follow up with you one-on-one. So to kick off with our first question, how do you prioritize the aspects of marketing you want to focus on as a founder or leader? And Matt, I'm going to go to you first on this one.
Hey. How do you prioritize? So I guess the first thing is if you're before product market fit, then the number one priority has to be finding product market fit. And in that case, I like to start with, validating the need for sure, and that you're solving, and then trying to find language market fit. So just, literally finding the right words that are going to resonate with the customer. And so, qualitatively, you can do that with interviews and user testing, and quantitatively, your metrics you're going to want to go up are going to be click rates and conversion rates through your funnel, showing that when people see your marketing, they're excited about your proposition. And the reason I start there, even before product market fit, is just that you can iterate language a lot faster than you can iterate product. So once you get the language right, it's easier for everyone to know what to build and how to deploy and sell the service. After product market fit, I find usually if you sort of map out the entire business as like a giant equation with, daily active users or nights booked or whatever your sort of North Star metric is, and you map all the inputs that make that happen, you can usually find there's a rate limiting step in there somewhere. There's a bottleneck. For example, if you have bad retention, don't spend money on advertising. If you have terrible conversion on your landing page, you don't know how good your retention is, don't spend money on advertising. Focus on your landing page. So at that point, just sort of look for where the bottleneck is and focus your attention there.
Thanks, Matt. That sounds like a really sensible starting point. Jules, I want to see if you have anything to add to that.
Yeah, I guess I completely agree with Matt in terms of like the first thing you need to do is just speak to as many people as possible and lots of your early customers and see what language they use. It's really interesting to basically you need to speak about the language that they're speaking to you in terms of to try and find that product market fit. I think for us specifically, which is probably different in other businesses, but we worked a lot on bottom of the funnel first. So very like the people who are coming for intent. Because if you never get the bottom, I think Matt actually told me this, is like if you never get the bottom of the funnel right, if you're doing lots of stuff at the top of the funnel, they're always just going to leak out essentially. So for us specifically, it was around people who actually want to book something tomorrow. So I think kind of talking to people about the broader need and then getting that bottom of the funnel stuff really right at the beginning.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Robert, anything to add there?
After these two amazing answers, I'm not sure what I can add, to be honest with you. I wanted to speak about Jules's bottom of the funnel as well. She touched on it, so just me repeating right now what she said, I don't think it makes sense.
Well, Robert, I think if I understand right, you've got a marketplace business, right?
Sort of a marketplace, consumer tech, right? So you could place it in a marketplace, but some people say, well, it's not entirely a marketplace. What we do, we help connect people. We solve the need of finding a sport partner for racket sports, and there's both sides of the funnel. It's the ones that are constantly looking for partners, and the ones that always want to play tennis.
So yeah, that's the reason I called that out. Is I think for anyone with a two-sided business, you'd also need to figure out which is going to be the rate limiting side of the business. So in the early days at eBay, some products, some categories were missing supply. Some categories had a lot of supply and not enough demand. So that's an important thing to consider where to start.
That's why we are not entirely a marketplace, because there's no real supply and demand for us. There is just people looking for partners. Although we do have coaches, we do have clubs. That's where the supply comes from when you look at the marketplace. People wanting coaching, tennis coaching, badminton coaches, people needing to find clubs and book through the platform. But it's good that that's just something additional and not our core strategy. So we don't really have to worry so much about the supply. That's just something additional feature.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. And I think that's a really good point, Matt, on the double-sided marketplace, because I know particularly for us, that's definitely presented some challenges. Okay, I want to move on to ask each of you for a recent example of success in marketing and whether this was achieved in-house or through an external agency. And I want to start with you, Karina.
Of course. So one of the things when I think about agencies and in-house, it's really looking at the type of project that you have. So one agency that I actually love to work with for a website is called Appetite Creative, and they helped me create my own website. And they did a phenomenal job of it. And then actually I have introduced them to a couple of different people, and they are now helping us with the website for this edtech startup that I advise. And what has been beautiful about them is that they are just the best. They provide such good level of expertise in something that, to be honest, you don't need to be replicating it in-house. You know, you're only changing the website, let's say 2, 3 years, 5 years, depending on the business that you're in. So having that specialized knowledge is super helpful, and is not a skill that we need to develop in-house. So yeah, it has been a phenomenal project. I'm super happy with the outcomes, and it took a website that was really not that great and that the team actually spent way too much time in trying to create into something that is the next level.
Great, thanks, Karina. Sahil, what are your thoughts there?
I would probably call out 2 recent examples that one is with an agency and one is with a freelancer, but they're kind of the side of the same coin. Earlier this year, when we were taking our product to the market, the way we were explaining the product, we quickly realized that we needed some sort of, even to have basic thing, brochures to explain what the product, because we're in a B2B marketplace. People see the website, but they like to see something. They like to send brochures via email as well. And so brochure is a complicated process because you're not looking at design, but you're also looking at the language, that how you describe your product. So we work with an agency that, even though we have copywriting experience in the team, and my co-founder are very comfortable writing, but the way we describe our product is very different to how we think we should be describing our product to kind of a potential manual. This agency really helped us not just figure out the design of the brochures, made the product stand out, but also how to write it out and explain it to people. So when the initial drafts that we wrote, we were like, oh, we basically put a lot of information in there, and this agent took and said, this is fab, this is fab, this is fab. Cut it out and focus on these 3-4 things. And that, until you speak to an expert who have done their job a few times, you don't realize. You don't realize how complicated a messaging that you can come up with in your own head, whereas it can be really simplified. So that brochures were produced, and we have been using them since then. We have been improving on them, but that allowed us to see it in a very different way, how to explain the product to different people. And more recently, we have been experimenting with Google Ads. So one of the things that, as Matt pointed, like we are in a classic product market fit phase, right? The first things, what do we need to do? We need to go out and explain the product, what it does, start getting kind of conversations going, and making sure that we're describing the product right. We are actually hitting the right kind of market as well. Coming to the second point, hitting the right market, we trialed a few things. We went out and did some direct outreach, which did not go that as well. So then we changed channel, went on. We're looking at Google Ads at this moment, paid Google Ads, and that again, we didn't have the talent in-house. We can't figure out how these ads work. Yes, we can spend time looking at it, but that's time that me and my co-founder doesn't have. Well, if we're focusing on the product, we're talking to other clients as well. So we needed to quickly put together a campaign in place and help us design that process flow, ad to landing page to booking, form, and things like that. So we went out to a freelancer that came recommended to us, and this person, over the past 1 month that we've been working with them, it started to show the results very, very quickly so far for us, which is pretty exciting, because that is a stage we now need to kind of figure out. That the stage that we are now at is, okay, we have some product market fit going on, but now we need to build a sales process that is repeatable and scalable, and that's kind of the stage that this freelance is helping us with.
Yeah, that's exciting. I think you've touched on a couple of things there that are really kind of the crux of this debate. And the one is that you mentioned about having somebody to kind of sense check the internal language you used. And we've gone through this exercise recently, and you can use a lot of terms that mean something to you within the organization, but don't necessarily mean anything to the broader audience. And I think the second thing is about, as you say, just not having the time, being able to kind of do a little bit of performance marketing here and there, but is that time best served? And are you necessarily getting the best ROI doing that in-house versus externally? Matt, I'm keen to get your thoughts on that.
Sorry, on the recent wins or on the which bit of it?
Yeah, a couple of recent wins and also your thoughts on when people kind of rush straight to outsourcing something, whether you think that that pays off and why.
Okay, I mean, it's complicated. So I don't tend to see recent wins that go through agencies because I tend to work with teams directly, but we've got a team in my current cohort. It's called Collective, and it's an app for accepting payments from a group of people. But it's kind of a vague category. So in their onboarding flow, they just added a screen that asks you, why are you collecting payments? And it just gives you options. We're going on a trip together. We're collecting money for a gift, reimbursement for an event we all attended, raise money for a charity, things like that. And so they added this additional question. And so they added friction to the flow, but they ended up increasing conversion through their onboarding flow by about 35%. Because by asking this question, you're sort of reassuring people that you actually solve their use case. And that wasn't totally clear at the top of the funnel, if that makes sense. Anyway, so I thought that was a really clever one, because normally you wouldn't see adding friction to a flow as something that improves conversion. But in this case, the language helped to clarify. In terms of outsourcing, I mean, I've seen a few cases where agencies do things well. I've seen a lot of cases where people waste a lot of money on agencies. I think it's important that you get very clear on what it is that you need this agency to do. That you have someone who knows what good looks like and knows the difference and isn't, frankly, going to get bullshitted in a pitch meeting, because people who run agencies, some of them deliver, some of them don't, but they all talk a good game. There's certain areas where I think it makes sense to outsource, like SEO, where there's kind of a lot of technical knowledge and there's a real advantage to, a small group of people who do it with a lot of clients. There's other pieces. I was interested. I just emailed Sahil actually to find out this agency, because oftentimes getting messaging right, getting branding right, it's a very tough thing to outsource, because you're outsourcing this to someone who doesn't know your customers, often doesn't even take the time to talk to your customers. And so I've seen that really go pear-shaped. So I hope that helps.
Yeah, I think that's a really good insight. And I think from our experience, I totally agree. It's sometimes the more technical channels where you can get the best return on your investment. But yeah, interested to hear your thoughts, Robert, on any recent wins and kind of also your approach to the agency versus in-house.
Yeah, I would like to speak on the second one, agency versus in-house, and then tie it to the wins. But I believe the second part is more important for the audience than hearing what my recent wins are. So I'm think that if you have someone that does marketing on the team, you don't need an agency anymore. Well, that's not actually true. My background has been purely performance marketing, so I've done it for years and years, and we are working on agency. It might sound stupid, but actually not. So first of all, whenever you choose an agency, if you don't know marketing, it's good to have a marketing friend, colleague, whatever, acquaintance, be there with you and tell you if they are, Matt's words, bullshitting you or not. So that's very important, because as a non-marketing person, you can be bullshitted very easily. So that's number one. Number two, it's always good to get two agencies in the beginning, make them perform one against each other, and then see which one has better results after a month or two, and then go with the one that performed better. This de-risks your chances of not getting the results you'd like to. Number three, I do believe that in the beginning of every startup, you will need an agency to help you, because an agency has the design power, has the manpower, while you need to hire someone in-house, and then they need to go through a learning curve. But again, it depends on if marketing is central to the business. I don't think that it's a long-term game with the agency, as you need to bring it in-house at one point to have full control over it. But I see a lot of startups doing it with agencies in the beginning, even though one of the founders or whoever is an ex-performance marketing manager, as you don't have time. You literally don't have time for marketing as well, done properly, marketing done properly, because for marketing, well, everybody has time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Those ones are my most three important points, and then I think on the recent wins, well, the recent win has been working with an agency that has clear goals, that we know exactly what they need to do. We tell them exactly what they need to do, and then they just perform. And that's it. That's the win. And if they don't, then I will take over. I don't know, or we'll hire in-house at one point.
You make it sound so easy. I like the concept of hiring two and then comparing performance. I think that's very smart. Jules, I want to move to you because I know you've had experience with a little bit of both. So what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think we have definitely used a few agencies, and yeah, I love that point of like having two battle against each other. I think for us, like when we've used an agency, what we've made sure is like we have enough like manpower in the business to do like the menial tasks, if you see what I mean. Like menial sounds bad, but like as in like if they direct us, like you're paying a lot of money for those agencies, so you need a lot of people to be able to like deliver those results. For example, I'm just saying the most recent example is we needed loads of our pages put in like metadata and update every page for SEO, and we have like thousands of pages. So it's good to get an agency to do like the strategy behind us and tell us exactly what to do, like very practically. But then we have like other people who are obviously making all those changes. I think you just need to, make sure you're not paying for them to do stuff that you obviously can do yourself, or you can outsource somewhere else that's going to be much cheaper. So
yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think sometimes what we've seen in the past, the tendency is to kind of outsource everything because it's like, okay, great, I just want this off my plate. But as you say, sometimes companies can benefit from being a bit more selective and leveraging the talent they have in-house as well as outsourcing. And I think also, Robert, to touch on your point about it doesn't necessarily mean if you hire one marketer, then you don't need to work with any agencies ever again, which is something else that we see and we get a lot of requests for. Great.
If I could
move on. Oh, go ahead, Matt.
Just one thing I want to call out is I think company startups really tend to underestimate the risk and importance in marketing. People are too busy to do marketing and things like that. Most startups are able to raise money. Most startups are able to make products and launch products. But I was an investor for a few years, and I can tell you the reason startups fail is because they never crack distribution. They never really stand up successful marketing. That is where most of the risk is in any startup's growth. And I think, outsourcing it, postponing it, focusing on other business priorities, you do so at your own risk. And I think a lot of startups I see at early stage, the big mistake they make is not taking marketing seriously enough early enough.
Yeah. Could I also add something to your point here? Because I think that when I first entered the question, the topic was slightly different, but the main thing that I like to consider when thinking about marketing is where the learnings from the exercise of marketing is actually going to influence your decision making for the company's vision and goal. So for example, if you need to know why people are buying your product and what ads are actually working and who are your customer segments, yes, start with a PPC agency when you don't have the budget to actually hire a person just to do that. But very fast to create a plan for you to be bringing that type of resource in-house, because the value is not actually just acquiring that customer per se and making that sale, is actually in understanding how people are reacting to your messaging. And I think that that's one of the key frustrations that I have had in a number of companies, where you outsource everything and you just see the bottom line, where you have not understood what's the optimization process. And that type of learning can be also super valuable to influence your entire direction of the company. So if I was to build an ideal marketing team for myself, it does start with some of that capability externally, just because of costs, to be honest. But as soon as I have the ability to bring somebody that does PPC, I would bring them in-house. Content, again, these needs to be brought in-house, because it's also there's quite a lot, and you also need to make sure that you are speaking to people in the right voice, because this is how they learn about you. And then some of the other things like SEO, it changes so frequently, and people really need to be on top of the industry. So you can have a combination of somebody from your internal team working with an agency just to get that type of insight. But I think that the key decision making here should be, is the learning of the exercise going to impact the direction of my company day in, day out. With the example that I had with the website agency, that's not a skill that the team actually needs to develop. You change the website every once in a while, but if it is a skill that is going to change, impact the day-to-day of the business, as well as the learnings are going to be quite valuable for you to better understand your customers, then you should bring it in-house.
Yeah, I think some really, really great points there. Yeah, around is it going to be a repeatable exercise that it's worth the team upskilling in? And I think also the point around even if it's a failure, that doesn't mean that it's not valuable, providing that there is some learning attached to it. And I think that's another thing, like talking to founders, that we there's often a bit of an oversight. It's like, oh, this campaign didn't work, and it's like, but there's always learnings that can then be derived and implemented into the next round. So yeah, some really good points there. Perfect. I want to move on to the next question, which is around the most common mistakes you see founders making when it comes to marketing, maybe from communities, maybe this is a mistake you've made. I think from our side, what we tend to see is very early stage startups wanting to hire a CMO or a head of growth or somebody very senior before they've established really any understanding of their customer base, before they've tested any channels. And that's something we tend to see time and time again. I want to go to you, Sahil, to make you really uncomfortable and kick off that one.
Sure. I mean, like, I wanted to follow on to the comment that Matt made, that what he saw was early startups not paying enough attention to marketing. I put my hand up on that. I actually really didn't think much of marketing when I started this journey. In fact, yeah, it took me a little while, quite a while, to realize that actually marketing is not a separate thing for a tech business. Marketing is basically sales. Sales is marketing, and marketing is sales. It is the enabler for you to have a sales conversation. And that this change in thinking is what has prompted us to kind of accelerate on the distribution side now. Because now what we do is, like, the way I think is, okay, in this journey that we are on, whether it's product market fit, I need to be basically, I'm on a sales journey from the first conversations to the later to bigger clients. For every stage, what do I need to have that sales conversation, whether it's a brochure, whether it's a website, whether it's a landing page, and where are these clients coming from? And that's where, for me, marketing is now plugging the gaps. And it took me a long while to realize that. And yeah, I'll put my hand up to it. I think the sooner you realize, the better. That it's not a separate thing. It's an integral part of your sales engine and getting to product market fit and beyond.
Very honest review. I'm sure everyone appreciates that. Rob, I want to move to you, particularly with your background. I'm interested to hear your thoughts.
Sorry, when you actually answered the question, my video went off, and I didn't want to say, could you please repeat it?
Yeah, of course. What are some of the most common mistakes you've seen startups make when it comes to marketing, whether that's yourself or anybody else that you know of, come across?
That's a very good question. There are so many. You've mentioned that hiring a CMO or a head of growth in the beginning could be a mistake. Well, it's hard to say is it a mistake or not when you have two tech co-founders or two tech co-founders and one on finance, and they actually don't know, they don't have friends, they don't have the skills or the background in marketing, and they say, well, we need to grow, we need to prove some revenue, some metrics, we need 60,000 users, 10,000 users, whatever, and then they hire this very senior person that helps them get to that initial KPI, and then they realize that, well, that's not the only successful KPI. You need to look at it a bit more in the long term. That could be a mistake, but that could also be not a mistake. It depends on the person you find out. Again, whenever you hire a marketing person, a CMO agency or whatever, I think you should have someone with expertise next to you to understand your goals and the KPIs. One mistake is indeed that, and we are doing it, it's actually incredible, even though I'm a performance marketing manager and we are doing the same mistake. You think I should know better, but it's so hard as a founder and as two founders to get the product out and to get initial traction, and then you have to show good metrics, engagement metrics, especially in B2C, engagement metrics and activation metrics and retention. And you have to focus 110% of your time on the product, improving and optimizing the flows, everything product related. Then you forget about marketing. And I'm to blame about this. And how can I be in 3 places at the same time? I'm not actually saying 6 places, because that's probably what a founder has to do in the beginning. So it's a hard question, you know. It's about what do you need to prioritize, what do investors, or what are you looking for in the beginning? Are you looking for creating at least working product that once you bring people in, you know, you have some good metrics, so you don't spend marketing money before that? Or do you bring first people in, you prove that you can create a community, you see where your flaws are, and then you focus on the product more and in the beginning on marketing? It's a hard question for me to answer, but these are the 2 things. Well, at least the 2 things. I'm sure other panelists can get you other 10 things to think about. At least the 2 things that that our founders should consider. I hope it makes sense.
Makes total sense. Don't worry, we can't expect you to answer all of the questions and challenges in marketing on this session. Matt, I want to move to you. Interested in hearing your thoughts on the common mistakes.
You know, we've talked about a lot of them. I think focusing on marketing too late, not taking it seriously enough, pinning all your hopes on this key hire. I mean, Robert's right. If you bring it, you know, why would you? It's kind of crazy because almost no company has a marketing co-founder, but why, you know, building the tech and having finance as co-founder level work, why not marketing? But there's a difference between having a co-founder and hiring someone off the street. And most people, especially with the title CMO, tend to come from big companies and see their job as spending advertising budgets. But even if you don't go for the CMO title, if you bring in a senior marketer early, you're going to pay 6 figures. You're going to pay a recruiter 10, 20, 30%. They're going to want a budget. They're going to spend, you know, $200,000 a month on OpEx and hire people. And it's going to take you 6 or 9 months to find out if they're any good or not. And that's the problem. They might be good. You know, I'd say maybe there's a 1 in 5 or 1 in 10 chance they're good. But the problem is it's 6 months, $500,000 and equity off your cap table to find out if they're good or bad. So it's a risky leap. I'm not saying don't do it, but most of the best startups I've seen have smart people internally. It's easier to teach a smart person how to do growth than it is, I think, to bring in a growth person and hope that they're smart and can figure out your business. So a lot of them is sort of homegrown talent. I guess the other big one I see is, you know, we've talked a lot about language and copy, is people thinking very inside out and, you know, building websites and marketing and ads and cold sales emails and pitches that talk all about your product. And your customers don't, you know, this sounds cliche, but your customers don't care about your product. They care about their problems and struggles day to day. And inevitably, the stuff that works, the marketing that converts and brings people in, really speaks to the things that are troubling the customer, their goals and their hopes and their anxieties. And most startups come around to understanding those things and talking about them way too late in their journey.
I wanted to say, if anybody is interested in what Matt just said about talking to the why, there is a really great talk by Simon Sinek that talks about starting with why. And I have made every one of my sales team and marketing teams listen to that, because I personally never did sales and marketing. I come from a management consulting background until I was at Crimson Education, and I helped the company go from Series A to Series C, and I launched the entire operation in Europe, and I was forced into that situation. And being able to change the framework around, like, just talk to the why of the person and really try to connect with the individual values, rather than thinking about marketing in a way of just metrics. And we ended up going from the 30th location worldwide in terms of the company, the places that we were in, to becoming the most profitable company, not profitable, most highest revenue that was generated that year in our region. And we went from 30 to first. And that's because we just spent the entire time focusing on the why. I didn't have that technical background in marketing, but I do have a background in psychology, and thinking about how you actually connect with people should be the biggest thing that underlies everything. And as Matt said, if you have smart people that also become people focused. A lot of the metrics and processes you can learn yourself, and you can have agencies to complement anything more technical, and you can also hire a technical person. But yeah, it's something you can learn.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point around sometimes just zooming back out to the bigger picture, and always, yeah, taking it back to the why, because it's quite easy to get stuck in the weeds with marketing, definitely. Jules, I want to move to you on the mistakes question.
I mean, a lot of good points. You guys have covered a lot of them. I guess for us, we make so many mistakes. I'm sure we're making a lot now. I think one thing that we've done more recently, which is hard until you're at a certain point, but I think a mistake is not focusing like on your current customers. Like specifically, it's like obviously that cringe thing where it's like much easier to get your current customers to carry on than new ones. But if you have a product where you can expand the revenue of your current ones, that's like one thing. The second is like you can, as we said before, like use their language for marketing. So doing like focus groups, speaking to them as much as possible. Like 3, they're going to be like your biggest advocates essentially, and you can, you know, they can refer, and you also can get like case studies, testimonials, etc. from them. And it's much better for people to talk about your product than you talk about your product. So if you can get other people to talk about it, then you can. It's like A, cheaper, B, quicker. You don't have to get anyone, hire anyone. So I think like a mistake is like not actually focusing on your current customers, and just like, you know, I know as a founder, all I want is like that channel on Slack with new registrations to be like ping, 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 ping. But like actually what you should be concentrating on is speaking to your current ones and trying to get them to use the product as much as possible.
Yeah, I think that's such an important point. That's something that we are definitely guilty of as well, and we've been addressing recently. But it sounds, yeah, like it sounds crazy, but I think it is so easy to kind of overlook and neglect your existing customers when you have these really ambitious targets, and be totally focused on the acquisition without kind of seeing that as a channel to really nurture. So yeah, great point. So one of the questions that I actually got a lot prior to the webinar was focused on budgets. A lot of questions on kind of monthly spend, how to determine budgets, particularly as a first-time founder, especially because it can take a bit of time to be able to justify that ROI. So I'm keen to get all of your thoughts on how you approach that. Yeah, maybe especially kind of at the early stages. Robert, can I go to you first on that one?
Yes. Well, you never start with a big budget. You always start small, and then you scale based on your results. If I would have £1 million to spend on marketing right now, probably I'd spend, and then let's say I'm doing my research, I'm thinking, okay, what is my product all about? What's the keyword volume? Does it make sense to do paid search? Does it make sense to do Instagram, Facebook? So I'm picking a channel and I go with the one after research and talking, of course, with others, the one that I would think has the best results that could be cost per registration, could be ROAS, could be ROI, could be, well, many results. I would probably put I don't know, £200-300 a day into it out of $1 million, and then I would optimize it, increase slowly the budget, and then yeah, gladly to put $1 million monthly into it if I can manage to to scale properly and to keep at least a constant CPR, or hopefully a decreasing CPR, or whatever my goal is, and or to decrease ROAS. In terms of budget, there's never a question how much am I putting, is how much am I first of all willing to put, because I have £1 million budget for the company, I can spend $1 million on marketing. Half of it goes to salaries, whatever, etc., tech, whatever, and then I have 30% left for marketing for a whole year. Especially if you get investment, you know, money runs out, as you are not in the beginning profitable in terms of ROI. And then let's say you have 10,000 a month, but do I spend 10,000 a month? Yeah, I could, but let's see if I can achieve good results. If I can achieve, well, good results doesn't mean in the first month I have to reach my desired CPR. It means, do I see a improving trend of reaching that target in the next 6 months? Like if my goal of CPR, let's say cost per registration, is £5 and I started off with 30, I think the chances for me to get to £5 are low. So I might need to completely change my strategy, completely change the channel, I don't know, hire another agency or whatever. But yeah, I just wish that, well, I wish that everybody would start a bit smaller and then scale up, then start big and then scale down. I think that's the first thing, because money, well, it costs. Money is well, it's important in the beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. I think some great advice there. And yeah, I think often when you get a little bit of money, there can be like a tendency to get overexcited and start to want to test everything at once and across all these channels. So I think that's great advice. Sahil, what are your thoughts on that? And how did you approach kind of defining the marketing budget?
Sorry, I was on mute. I was just saying it was not very scientific at all. I would kind of echo Robert's point that, you know, and in the beginning, when you don't have that much traction, you don't know what the cost of acquisition is, you don't know what the long-term value of your customer is. What you're doing is basically trialing stuff, right? So, and for us, it was more a case of, okay, we have raised this much. How much of that can we do for marketing, and what is the goal for it? I'm saying, like, I had planned this. This is not how I planned. We'd raised money, we had money left, and they said, okay, let's go for marketing. But when the more we started thinking about it, then we said, okay, what is our goal? What our goal for our next raise is to raise kind of get to this month of monthly revenue. And how are we going to get to it? We're going to get to it by testing these channels and getting this XYZ. And that's how and then we started speaking to agencies. How do we get to this, from basically, you know, £10 per month, say £1,000 per month, for example. How do we scale that? And then when you start talking to other people, then you get a very good idea of how much money it will take for you to kind of start scaling that thing up. And that's when you have an idea of more budget, because otherwise you're just basically taking a stab at the totally dark. But the important point is you having an idea first of where you want to get to, and then having conversations to figure out how much it will cost.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Starting actually at the end point or the outcome you want, and trying to kind of then reverse engineer that funnel and then think about the spend, which I think a lot of companies, again, it sounds fairly simple, but a lot of companies probably don't do enough. Matt, what are your thoughts there?
Again, I think it's important to distinguish between pre and post product market fit. So once you've achieved product market fit and you're growing, you should have some, you know, at least one, ideally 2 or 3 channels that have an obvious, clear payback period and good profitable unit economics. Or, you know, maybe, you know, ideally your best channels don't cost money, right? Maybe it's referrals growth, or it's inbound traffic to your content marketing or to SEO or something, but whatever, paid or unpaid, stuff that has good, clear, positive unit economics. You know, just dump money in to the extent you can get it, and ideally customer money, not investor money. And then normally in those cases, you want to set aside about 20% to be testing new channels and testing within channels, because, you know, channels do atrophy and change. You know, we're finding that with Facebook, things that worked great 6 months ago don't work now. And that will keep changing. And also the more money you pump into a channel, you hit diminishing returns, you know. You get all the cheaper traffic and then prices go up. If you're pre-product market fit, then the whole point is learning and testing. So you need enough traffic that you can be testing messages, testing landing pages, getting users to use your product, optimize your onboarding flow, everything. So set aside enough money to get customers into your funnel and learn, and don't kid yourself into thinking you've got product market fit and you should turn knobs and scale this up. I hate when I see companies where things start going up and to the right, and they want to make a nice pretty graph for fundraising and hit some random targets they set up. So they start pumping money into growth that isn't really working and isn't sustainable, and basically just shortening their runway and leading themselves into a crisis. So don't kid yourself and chase imaginary numbers. Your goal is learning until it's really obvious that you do have product market fit, and be honest with yourself and honest with your investors about that. Because I think one big thing that kills companies is trying to scale too soon and kidding themselves that, you know, the unit economics are working and the numbers are saying something they're not.
Yeah, definitely. makes a lot of sense. I think sometimes when you start to see a little bit of success, you can then have really unrealistic expectations and start to build, you know, these forecasts and growth charts that, yeah, aren't necessarily going to transpire. Which actually takes me on to my next point. And that when we sent out some comms asking for questions, the second most common one was around this concept of, you know, viral mechanics and quick wins. And do quick wins actually exist? You know, have you experienced them? Have people on the panel experienced them? Or is this a bit of a myth? Which I think is a really good question. Karina, can we kick that one off with you?
Sorry, muted myself. I can definitely speak to that because, to be honest, my company Nosy, we have been seen by over 50 million people because we actually got a lot of PR traction when I first launched during COVID. And I don't say this just because of my experience with Nosy, but in general, everything that you do is a combination of the steps that you took before. And for it to be a sustainable and impactful growth, you needed to create a sustainable basis in order to leverage that. More and more marketing is not actually about one single lever. You're going to have an omni-channel approach. So you're going to have multiple touch points with people at different segments of the funnel in order to convert them and continue that conversion process over time as well. So what that actually means for people is that not one single strategy is going to work for you, and that it will also take time for you to take a person throughout the entire customer journey as well. So, and also it will take time for you to even get your marketing right, for you to get your demographics right, for you to even make sure that you have the right product market fit as well. And this is an iterative process, which you're going to have a lot of failures until you then find a tipping point where things start working. And so one of the things that I have noticed a lot of people think is that, for example, they think, okay, if I'm going to have like this magic PR, everybody is going to start purchasing my product. And I don't say this because of my own experience with PR, because I already knew this before I started, but oftentimes like something like TV, you're not even thinking about buying something when you're watching a show or when you're seeing an ad, and you need to, that becomes a branding exercise, and then you're going to bring people towards different steps of the funnel. So you're not going to get a big break. It's not going to change your revenue numbers in the long term. It may help you for a few weeks, a few days, and I have had that experience with multiple companies that I have worked with, where, you know, you're in the cover of BBC, and for a week after, yeah, you get a little bit of traffic, and maybe that helps you get some good connections as well. But will your customer segment completely change because you were in BBC's front page? Not at all. And then the same can also be said about the other marketing channels, right? It takes at least 3 months for you to optimize a new channel with Facebook ads and PPC, etc. So you need that type of experimenting, and again, it's going to be over time that you're going to see that increase. So no, your quick win will be finding product market fit, and after you find product market fit, scaling that.
Yeah, I think a lot of good points there, and I like the mention of magic PR. That's definitely a term that was I've heard thrown around as well. Anything to add there from anyone on the panel?
I think in terms of like quick wins, like you can have quick wins, like where you get lots of people register or use your product once, but like it's normally like a trick, like as Karina says, like a PR, or it could be like an external event, but like unless that's a repeatable trigger event, like it can be a distraction. Do you know what I mean? If you find something that is a quick win, but it happens every 6 months, it's like it's worth investing your time into working out how to actually get users, get revenue from that. But if it is like a one-time thing that's never going to happen again, like it is a complete distraction. So I think you just got to think, is it like repeatable essentially?
I'll add, I think people, the idea of a quick win is obviously very seductive. And I think the reason we believe it is because we look back at all these startups and we hear these stories about, you know, Airbnb hacked Craigslist and PayPal hacked their way onto eBay. And we see all these sort of magic moments. But what you don't realize was Karina's point was they didn't just, sit around, that happened 5 years after Airbnb launched. They didn't just spend 5 years sitting around deciding whether or not they should hack Craigslist. They spent 5 years trying stuff that wasn't working, that got them smarter and better able to execute and learn more about their customers until they finally hit on the winning thing. So it looks like a quick win in hindsight, but that's just ignoring the 5 years of learning and testing and optimization that led to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like the whole point around repeatability is so important. And I think we've also been, as you say, it can be very alluring, very seductive. And we've definitely had situations where we've had that kind of influx. And then that's what the team have kind of been focusing on. But as you say, Jules, sometimes that can just be noise. If it's not repeatable and it's potentially not even the right audience, then sometimes efforts aren't maximized necessarily focusing on that. Great. I want to move on to the final question before answering a couple of the audience questions, which is just asking each of you to talk a little bit about your team and current setup in terms of marketing. So do you have somebody or multiple people on the team, or are you currently working with an agency or both? Robert, can you kick that one off, please?
We are working with an agency, although currently I'm thinking about switching as they are not performing the way I would desire to. But the problem is that requires time on my behalf, which I don't have. So we will continue to work with an agency until I have time to switch them, although I'm unhappy. So the great Tyrion Lannister said, when it's a compromise, when no one is very happy with it. Well, that's what I'm currently in the situation in. I'm not too happy, but I don't have time. So we will at some point, but that's the situation. They are the only ones. I'm managing them very closely. At the end of the day, I cannot micromanage them. There are few people and stuff, but that's the situation currently.
Great, thanks, Robert. Karina, what does it look like on your team?
Oh, so to be honest, we are bootstrapping Nosy, and I'm doing a lot of R&D. So one of the things about developing a hardware product is that it's going to be 10 times more expensive than you initially realized. So we are in the process of doing V2. So I have barely any overheads at the moment. So we're just, until we make our V2, and then in March, we'll be launching quite a big campaign around it. But other teams that I work with, as I have done very closely with this ad tech company, and they have quite a large team because they are based in Eastern Europe, where it's relatively cheaper to hire quite junior marketing. I have been working almost as a part-time CMO for them as well, so I provide more the strategic overview for the team, and we have one marketing manager coordinator that does the day-to-day. Initially, she was doing a bit of PPC and Facebook ads, but we're not getting the results. And to be honest, it was taking too much time from her day to achieve quite subpar results, because that's not her skill set. And to be honest, it was not the right position for her to even be put in that place. So when I came on board, I have partnered with a couple of digital agencies, one for PPC, so Google and SEO, Google and Facebook, and then we also have the same agency doing SEO as well, 2 different teams in the agency, and we are getting okay results. They are not ideal, but at the same time, it's freeing up other resources, so the team can also be thinking about strategy, so I can have this marketing manager not be as tactical, and we are working quite closely with them to optimize things. Right now, the company is expanding across different regions of Europe, so we are also testing new markets. So I'm probably going to stick with this PPC agency for a few more months, and only if they really prove that they cannot scale the results that we're achieving, that's potentially when I'm going to look at another agency. And just for context, I have hired and fired about 15 marketing agencies at my time. So these guys, to be honest, are quite good, because compared to what you can get. So I think that, yeah, as long as they can produce some positive revenue, and if you don't have time, some actual profitability to your company, if you don't have time, then this is something that you can look at optimizing. But obviously, if they're losing money, then yeah, take them out.
Perfect. I'm actually going to jump to a question just because I know we're a bit short on time. What are some clear indicators that you need to leave an agency? Because sometimes those targets you set at the beginning aren't very data driven, so could be unrealistic. So how do you know if it's actually their fault, or if you need to persevere with it for a bit longer? I'm gonna just open that up to the panel and see who's keen to take that one.
If they blame everybody else besides themselves, which can happen quite a lot.
I think it's tough with agencies or early hires, because a lot of times your business doesn't grow because your business isn't going to grow. Because you don't have the right product, you don't have, you haven't found the right customers, you don't have the right message. That's a hard thing for a marketer to fix. That's a hard thing for an agency to fix. So I think in either case, if things aren't working, I want to understand if there's a learning loop going on there, if they can tell you why things aren't working, and that they're, and show you they're getting smarter and what they're doing differently, and if they have a good nuanced understanding of where the problem is, and they're experimenting and testing, and if they're numerate, or are they just like, it doesn't work, let's try this other thing, you should try carousel ads, oh you should try Google Shopping. Like, if it's just a checklist of other stuff you might want to try, then they're just guessing.
Yeah, I think that's really important. Actually, if the results aren't where they are, coming up with some strategic suggestions that can address the fact that the performance isn't there, which I've worked with agencies where they have done that and where they definitely haven't done that. So I think that's a good distinction. Okay, just before we wrap up, another question we've had. What is just kind of one tip or piece of advice from your experience that you would share with other founders who are potentially just starting out on that journey and starting to think about marketing? Robert, do you want to kick us off?
One piece of advice, marketing related, or just one piece of advice for someone that wants to start a startup, and that's it.
I think more on the marketing side, yeah. But if you have both, then both.
Well, I'm gonna start with the with the one if you want to start a startup, and my question is, are you sure?
Go get a job.
I should have asked this question for myself 2 years ago. Okay. So and then on the marketing side, get a marketing co-founder.
Nice, I like it. Sahil?
I would kind of repeat what I said. I wouldn't see marketing as separate to sales. I would say sales and marketing is one piece, and you have to make sure what is the role marketing? What is the marketing fulfilling as a role to help you get along to that sales traction journey, and then being very clear about what you want to achieve with that.
Great one, Matt.
It's funny about the marketing co-founder. I looked back when I was a VC. I invested in 35 companies, and 6 of them have been really successful. And I look back on those, and thing is, of those 6, 5 of them had a co-founder who was either a product expert or a growth or marketing expert. And the companies that failed, almost all of them did not have someone with that operational expertise as a co-founder. So I would echo what Robert said. And I guess the general advice I tend to give is, like, if you look at startups that are successful, when it's time to grow, the entire company does growth. It's not this marketing function. The product team is focused on growth. At TransferWise, the compliance team really helped with growth. Making KYC and customer onboarding super easy. At Spotify, the lawyers really helped with growth because there were so many legal issues entering the US. So when it's time to grow, it's not a marketing job. It's everybody's job.
Yeah, I think that's a really good message. Jules, and then Karina, what are your thoughts on the one top tip?
I think my top tip, I think we discussed this when we were chatting before, is join every community and go to every newsletter. Like Matt has a really good newsletter, Neil Patel has a good one. There's like Content UK, Copy Club, Tech London. I would just literally add yourself to all of those things, because they will send you so much information. There's always someone you can ask. Everyone's done it before. So if you get yourself on enough of those, decide which ones are the ones for you, and do spend time like every week looking at them, because they'll like bring up new things you hadn't even thought about to focus on, and you'll get the right person to ask about it. So I would just ask others. Everyone's done it.
Yeah, so I have one that is very quick, which is just don't be swayed by a lot of crazy metrics that an agency is going to potentially put in front of you. You see them saying like sometimes, yeah, I provided 10x to this client, and it's so much bullshit. Like I even have seen people citing companies that I worked for before, saying that they actually helped us achieve results that they never did, and they are marketeers, so they are selling you on that. So the first thing is actually putting real metrics as well when you're working with agencies. Don't leave stuff to be fluffy, and that's that's how you decide if it is working. But then the second part here, which I think is the most important part, is make everything that you do about the customer. I think that a lot of times people separate technology and of these other areas of the business and they don't think about everything is about making the person's life better and provide the best possible experience, so they want to keep on transacting with you again. I think Salesforce did a research that about 80% of people say that customer experience is just as important as the product that they are actually buying, and that goes about the entire journey. So really think about what would make me happy through interacting with the company, and putting that through every department that you have, and how start thinking about how do you even sell that to people and how do you communicate with people. So product and marketing are actually not that separate, because you're trying to get people involved even as they experience the product that they are using.
Perfect. A really solid roundup there from everyone. And we are at time. Thank you so much to our wonderful panelists and to everyone for joining. We'll send a follow-up and share all the details of the panelists, and also a bit of a summary of some of the highlights from the webinar. But yeah, thank you all. Have a great afternoon, and we'll see you soon.
All right.
Thanks so much.
Great chat, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.
Bye.